You traveled by as strangers three, eating at Abram's hospitality. You find a way of visiting like friends to meet us where we are. You pitched your tent among their tents, neighborhood God who chose to live with them. You find a way of drawing near again to meet us where we are. You came to be the God with us, incarnate, who's closer than our pulse. God who wrapped himself in skin and bone to meet us where we are. God, he is not the God who's far away, up in heaven, kept from us or veiled. So we welcome you, Lord, on this day. Come meet us where we are. Come meet us where we are.
Good morning to you all, and a very warm welcome to Shabbat at the house. My name is Natalie Kendel. I am pastor here at the house, and I will also be your host for today. For those of you who are new here, the house is an online house church. You've joined us on our official YouTube channel where you can find stories, music, and events we've shared. And if you want to keep updated on what's happening and when, you can find us on our various social media accounts where we share announcements and news. Coming up this morning, we will be singing together, sharing prayer and meditation, and we'll be exploring a story found in 2 Samuel chapter 12. But to begin with, we have a few bits of information for you. Firstly, today's Shabbat at the house is only the first in a series, because we have prepared a whole bunch of events for you this winter season. Some of you may have already seen our trailer announcing this, but in case you haven't, this winter we are going to be sharing a series of new videos here on the channel, beginning today and lasting all the way till Christmas. We'll be hosting Shabbat at the house events on Saturdays, each week sharing a new Bible story. And we'll be launching episodes of our brand new podcast called The House Pod. The House Pod is a podcast about the practical sides of faith and how it plays into relationships and community. If you want to save the dates for our upcoming events, here is our calendar for the months of November and December to give you an overview of what's ahead. So feel free to take a screenshot of that if you'd like. We will, however, also be posting reminders ahead of time on Facebook, Instagram, and the community tab here on YouTube. We hope you can join us in the coming weeks, and we look forward to spending this time with you. The second bit of information concerns 2 free online courses at ZETEO School of Theology. We get a lot of questions and emails and comments asking how the Bible studies and stories which we share here at the house manage to explore the Bible and the biblical texts with such depth, and what method we use to do this. Well, it's not a mystery. It's not an exclusive skill that belongs to a secret organization of warlocks that drank from a pool of unicorn tears. It's not a skill we wish to gatekeep. If you pop over to ZETEO's YouTube channel, you'll find the Covenant Theology course and the How to Read the Bible course. Both of these courses are completely free and they teach the method and tools we use to research and study the Bible here at the house. These courses contain engaging classes with university-level curriculum, beautiful visual aids, and offer lifelong skills that you can use. So you'll be learning what theology students learn at university. But the classes are suitable for professional ministers and lay persons alike. So whatever level of experience you're beginning at, these courses are relevant and highly useful. You can go through these classes yourself on your own time, or you can use them as a resource to watch in your faith communities and your Bible study groups. In fact, if you're looking to lead a Bible study group or teach Bible studies, these courses are a great way to learn those skills. Our third bit of information, in addition to new stories and the launching of our new podcast, we also have a whole new set of music at the house. You already heard a sample of that at the beginning of this morning when we sang Meet Us Where We Are. If you scroll down and find the playlist called Congregational Songs here on our channel, you'll find a collection of brand new songs that we're going to be singing together. In Norwegian, we have this apt word that sadly has no direct translation in English, allsang. Allsang literally means all song, and it refers to music that is made specifically to be sung together in choirs, groups, congregations for sing-alongs. In English, we'd simply call this congregational music. Well, the songs in this playlist are allsang, music made for singing together. They were written specifically with this in mind. What ought a faith community to be singing together? What should we be praying for, expressing together, singing with one voice? You can listen to these songs and familiarize yourself with them, and in the coming weeks, you'll be hearing us singing some of these as we meet together. As time goes on, we'll add more songs to our congregational music playlist until we hopefully end up with a sort of online hymn book, if you will, a collection that you can also use as a musical resource. Feel free to use and teach these songs in your local churches and meeting groups. And finally, our last bit of information. Next week, on Saturday the 9th of November, we have another Shabbat at the House event, during which we'll be sharing a story called Your Servant is Listening. Now, this will be an extra special story with a full 1 hour feature instead of the usual approximately 30 minutes. So don't miss out on next week's special feature story. It's going to be a really good one. Same time, same place, next Saturday. And that's it for today's announcements. Let us now sing together, Your Mercy is Greater.
Your mercy is famous, your patience renowned. What imagination, what radical vision could envision us found? And your thoughts are higher than our biggest hopes. Your mercy is greater and your thoughts are higher than we ever can know. Your kindness is zealous, your helpfulness warm. What kind of tenacious depths of commitment keeps you holding on, Lord? And your thoughts are higher than our biggest task. Your mercy is greater and your thoughts are higher than our worst sins can match. plans are audacious, your strategy's wild. Is it not outrageous to fight for a race self-destructing and blind? But your plans are higher than our biggest mess, and we'll find your mercies running to meet us with a loving embrace. Your plans are better than our biggest mess. We'll find that your mercies running to meet us with a loving embrace. Your mercy is greater and your thoughts are higher than the mess we have made.
It is now time for our segment called Glimmers. Glimmers are small moments that can spark opposite emotions to triggers, such as joy, peace, and safety. Glimmers stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, which produces sensations of calm and relaxation. The term was coined by clinical social worker Deb Dana in her 2018 book, The Polyvagal Theory in Therapy. Glimmers have a positive impact on mental health and well-being. You can make glimmers even more impactful by finding someone to talk about them with. Well, today's glimmer is a video shared by a woman in Nebraska called Cornelia Murr. Cornelia and her mother were out walking on the open prairie of Alma, Nebraska, when they heard a bunch of noise overhead. They had stumbled into the path of a mass southern migration of snow geese. The visual was so beautiful they lay down to watch, and this is what they filmed. We are now going to sing Pray With Me, and after that we'll talk to God together, followed by a period of shared silence. And after that we'll dive right into our story for the day.
When we are feeling pain, if we are gripped by fear, when we are faced with difficult decisions, if we are caught in need, feeling anxiety, then there is one who gladly
Jesus, please give us each today the ability to hear wisdom, to not disregard what is wise or minimize what is important. Inspire in us the humility and the hunger to learn and apply what you teach us, what you show us. To those who need it today, restore in them a joy that is dynamic and swelling. To those who need comfort, bring waves of healing and reassurance and affirmation. To those who are seeking, grant them the answers or perhaps the right questions. And to all of us, as we sang at the beginning, meet us where we are, where each of us are emotionally, mentally, strength-wise. Let your Holy Spirit move us towards something good today, and as we now share in silence together, bring our thoughts and our focus to the things that you'd like to communicate and that you'd like to tell us. Thank you for sharing in prayer and silence with us. Now, without further ado, let's dive right into our story for today. Our story today is found in 2 Samuel chapter 12. Our setting is the royal palace in Jerusalem. David is currently the king of Israel, and Nathan, a prophet, is about to approach the king. The Lord sent Nathan to David. When he came to him, he said, "There were 2 men in a certain town, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had a very large number of sheep and cattle, but the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb he had bought. He raised it, and it grew up with him and his children. It shared his food, drank from his cup, and even slept in his arms. It was like a daughter to him. Now a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man refrained from taking one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare a meal for the traveler who had come to him. Instead, he took the ewe lamb that belonged to the poor man and prepared it for the one who had come to him." David burned with anger against the man and said to Nathan, "As surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die. He must pay for that lamb 4 times over because he did such a thing and had no pity." Then Nathan said to David, "You are the man." The context of our story today begins in the chapter before this one, in chapter 11. Here we find the story of David and Bathsheba. One day, King David views from the roof of his palace a woman bathing. Smitten with her, he seeks information about who she is, and finds out that she is the wife of Uriah, a soldier in David's military army. Despite her being married, David has her brought to him, and he sleeps with her, and then she is returned home. Soon after, Bathsheba sends word to David that she's pregnant by him. Now David cannot pretend this is not his child, because Uriah has been away on a military campaign. He's not been home. He's been off serving his king and people. The first thing David does in an attempt to hide what he's done is when Uriah returns home, he urges Uriah to go home, relax, stay with his wife. David is hoping Uriah will sleep with his wife and assume the coming child is his. Only David finds out that Uriah doesn't do this. Verse 9, "But Uriah slept at the entrance to the palace with all his master's servants and did not go down to his house." "Why didn't you go home?" David asks him. Uriah said to David, "The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my commander Joab and my lord's men are camped in the open country. How could I go to my house to eat and drink and make love to my wife? As surely as you live, I will not do such a thing." Seeing that this cover-up tactic won't work, David then sends Uriah back to the battlefield. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In it he wrote, "Put Uriah out in front, where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him so he will be struck down and die." So while Joab had the city under siege, he put Uriah at a place where he knew the strongest defenders were. When the men of the city came out and fought against Joab, some of the men in David's army fell. Moreover, Uriah the Hittite died. Joab, David's military commander, sent David a full account of the battle. He instructed the messenger, "When you have finished giving the king this account of the battle, the king's anger may flare up, and he may say to you, 'Why did you get so close to the city to fight? Didn't you know they would shoot arrows from the wall?'" Verse 22. The messenger set out, and when he arrived, he told David everything Joab had sent him to say. The messenger said to David, "The men overpowered us and came out against us in the open, but we drove them back to the entrance of the city gate. Then the archers shot arrows at your servants from the wall, and some of the king's men died. Moreover, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead." Verse 26. When Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. After the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing David had done displeased the Lord. This is our context, the events leading up to our scene in 2 Samuel 12, where Nathan the prophet approaches David. Nathan tells the king this story of a rich man and a poor man. The rich man has lots of sheep and cattle. The poor man only has one sheep, a sheep which he loves dearly. But when a traveler passes by and there is called to show hospitality and to feed him, does the rich man take one of the animals from his abundant flocks and slaughter it? No. He takes the one sheep from the poor man. And we're told that upon hearing this story, David burned with anger. Not only does David burn with anger against the rich man, but his anger leads to a fierce sentence. "As surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die. He must pay for the lamb 4 times over because he did such a thing and had no pity. As surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die." Now this is not the first time that David's anger has burned, nor is it the first time it is mentioned or alluded to in recent memory. In fact, David's anger comes up in the previous chapter which we just read, chapter 11. When David's military commander Joab is going to send back a messenger to the king with a report, with an update of what's happened on the battlefield, Joab warns the messenger. He, that is Joab, instructed the messenger, "When you have finished giving the king this account of the battle, the king's anger may flare up." Now, why would Joab say something like that? Joab had been with David a long time. He had known David for years, since he was a younger man on the run, an outlaw escaping the murderous King Saul, his predecessor. Joab was one of the band of David's mighty men, a warrior, a confidant of David. He had seen David in a variety of situations, high-pressure situations, crises. Not only that, but Joab is no meek and mild lamb himself. Joab has a history of being vengeful and excessively violent, killing 3 men in cold blood, acting against David's wishes. So we know that if Joab is warning a messenger about David's anger, just be aware that David's anger might flare up. I think it's safe to say that David's anger flaring up is something that's happened before, often or starkly enough to warrant a warning from his own military commander. We've seen in the previous chapter that David is willing to murder to cover up his sin. Now, with all this in mind, let's again consider what Nathan is doing. Nathan, sent by God, is confronting David directly about his crime. He tells a story to demonstrate to the king the audacity and evil of what's been done. And when David hears the story, his anger burns. He's already beginning to dole out death sentences. If your king is having such a reaction to a story, it's safe to say you might be a little worried about how he's going to react when you point to the reality, when you point the finger at him. And yet Nathan says to David, "You are the man. You are this rich man in the story who has everything. You can have any young women as your wives and concubines. You have the pick. You are in charge. You have all the privilege. You are wealthy, powerful, supreme in the land, and yet you took something that wasn't yours from a poor man, from people who had little, from 2 people who serve you, who are under your command and power. You abused your power as king, as leader. You are the man. How dare you speak that way to your king, Nathan? How do you dare accuse your God-appointed Lord and Master?" Something else to note here about Nathan is that we often picture him as a wise, old, aged prophet with a white beard when he approaches David's throne in chapter 12. But Nathan was either of a similar age to David or younger than him. Nathan lives beyond David. David was about 70 years when he died, but Nathan is still around for years after David's death. And he continues to guide David's son, Solomon, for years. So most likely, Nathan is David's younger. But despite having less power and less years, Nathan doesn't stop there. He continues, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you from the hand of Saul. I gave your master's house to you, and your master's wives into your arms. I gave you all Israel and Judah, and if all this had been too little, I would have given you even more. Why did you despise the word of the Lord by doing what is evil in his eyes? You struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and took his wife to be your own. You killed him with the sword of the Ammonites." Upon hearing this, will David have Nathan put to death on the spot? Or will he have him secretly murdered the way he had Uriah? Will he now fly at Nathan in a blind rage? Many kings and leaders would. Verse 13. Then David said to Nathan, "I have sinned against the Lord." Upon being confronted, David admits that he has sinned, that what he has done is wrong. Now, David was not a good man. There are no good men save one. All fail, all mess up, although not all to this degree. But this story in 2 Samuel 12 demonstrates to us that there is a difference between David as a leader and many other leaders. This difference didn't lie in him being perfect, nor in a flawless record. What he did to Bathsheba and Uriah was a horrific crime. But the difference lies in how David responds when confronted with his sin, how David responds when approached with his faults, with his failure. He is confronted by a subordinate with a direct and unwavering condemnation, and he responds with what? Admittance, truth, honesty, accountability. No excuses, no defense, no deflection, but with confession. And note here that a man who is known for having high passions and whose anger flares up, he doesn't use his anger as an excuse to react aggressively, violently, to rant and rave, or to blow up on Nathan. David confesses his wrongs, and Nathan responds by saying, God has forgiven you. He will forgive you. You're not going to die. Note that God's judgment is more merciful than the one David was ready to dole out earlier. The Lord has taken away your sin. You are not going to die. Now, we could end the story here. We could conclude with how unusual it was for a king to respond to an accusation in this way. But the story doesn't end here. A remarkable twist shows up, and it's easy to miss. It's tucked away in the folds of one of the least interesting, most dreaded parts of Bible stories, namely a chronology. Over in another book of the Bible called 1 Chronicles, the story of the kings of Israel and Judah are told. And in 1 Chronicles chapter 3, we find a record of the children of David. Chapter 3 opens like this. These were the sons of David, born to him in Hebron. The firstborn was Amnon, the son of Ahinoam of Jezreel. The second, Daniel, the son of Abigail of Carmel. The third, Absalom, the son of Maacah, daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur. The fourth, Adonijah, the son of Haggith. The fifth, Shephatiah, the son of Abital. And the sixth, Ithream, by his wife Eglah. These 6 were born to David in Hebron, where he reigned 7 years and 6 months. David reigned in Jerusalem 33 years, and these were the children born to him there: Shammua, Shobab, Nathan, and Solomon. These 4 were by Bathsheba, daughter of Amiel. There were also Ibhar, Elishua, Eliphelet, Noga, Nepheg, Japhia, Elishama, Eliada, and Eliphelet, 9 in all. All these were the sons of David, besides his sons by his concubines, and Tamar was their sister. Among his children is a son named Nathan. It is one thing to bow your head and take the critique of someone, but even when that critique is founded and true, our pride, our ego, often causes us to do everything from hate the messenger to completely avoid and dissociate from said messenger. When we're called out for our wrongdoing, we often avoid the person who saw our faults laid bare. We don't want to be around a person like that. They cause us discomfort. We can't pretend around them. They know what we've done. They've seen an ugly part of us. But David calls his son the same name as the prophet. And the timeline reveals that he does this after the incident in 2 Samuel 11 and 12. So after his adultery, murdering, and being confronted by the prophet, This is confirmed in the genealogy we just read in 1 Chronicles 3, verse 5. David reigned in Jerusalem 33 years, and these were the children born to him there: Shammua, Shobab, Nathan, and Solomon. These 4 were by Bathsheba. So not only is this the order of events, but we're told David had his son Nathan with none other than Bathsheba. Nathan was the elder brother of Solomon, whom David also had with her. In case there was any doubt in our minds that David isn't shying away from this deliberate connection, he calls his son, whom he has with Bathsheba, to whom he committed such a heinous crime, the name of the man who pointed his finger at David's sin and called him out on it. The messenger of criticism is often a hated person, even when their criticism is spot on, even when all they're doing is holding up a mirror so that we may see our true face. There's a reason the saying goes, "Don't kill the messenger," because the bringer of such truth makes us uncomfortable, makes us look bad, causes us to have to face the reality of what we've done, the truth of our choices. And often we then avoid those who saw our faults laid bare like that. We don't want to keep being around that person. At best, we'll avoid them. At worst, well, there's a long list of options there. Attacking them, assassinating their character to try to discredit them, making excuses, shifting blame, projecting, making threats. But David names his son after the prophet who pointed the finger at him. He honors the messenger. His son will be a living daily reminder of the man who confronted his king. David was called a man after God's own heart, which is remarkable due to how much he messed up. This description was not an attempt to justify the crimes he committed, and the narrative leaves no room for any suggestion that God did not severely judge what David did. There were severe outcomes, and David had to live with the consequences. But perhaps being a person after God's own heart, a leader, a ruler, a king after God's own heart, means something other than the perfection or moral spotlessness we've come to associate it with. For who on earth can have a heart truly as perfect, as blameless, as good, as pure as God's? That list would quickly be whittled down to exactly 0. Instead, perhaps this all has to do with humility and a particular type of response to one's faults. David was a leader who fessed up to his wrongs, humbly, clearly, taking accountability without wavering or excuse, even in a matter, the story demonstrates, he was clearly deeply ashamed of and wanted to cover up. Now, how do we react when confronted with our mistakes? How do we respond when our mess-ups, our sins, shortcomings, ignorance, ineptitude, crimes, the harm that we have done is called out by others? Does your pastor react like David when they are approached? Do your parents? Does your boss? Does your conference president? Do your friends? Do you? When we hear stories about someone bravely confronting another person, we tend to imagine ourselves in the role as the confronter, don't we? We usually don't picture ourselves as the confronted. But how would you react if a subordinate, someone under you, someone younger than you, someone with less power than you, approaches you about something you've done wrong? Many would not act the way that David did. Many do not listen, are not willing to see. Ego steps in, pride sets in, superiority takes the driving wheel. Many use things like a temper or anger or other emotions as an excuse to flare up and attack the one approaching them. Many would rather attack the messenger than admit to the truth of their message. We often hate the people through whom difficult truths about ourselves come, whether that person is sent to us by God or whether they are simply in our circle and they are willing to speak the truth, speak wisdom to us. But do we take ownership of our mistakes? Are we, whatever our personality, background, culture, baggage, mindset may be, are we approachable? Are we willing to guard ourselves with humility so that the harm we do can be met with honesty and be made right? How do we respond? And now imagine being in David's situation and then naming your son Nathan. Nathan means gift of God, or God has given in Hebrew. Imagine naming your child after the prophet who pointed out your wrongs and then calling him a gift that God has given. When was the last time you called someone's criticism of your wrongs a gift? What sincere regret, remorse, repentance, and humility does that demonstrate about David? And what does that tell us about what type of leader is after God's own heart? Thank you for joining us this morning. We wish you a week full of glimmers. May the God of justice and second chances inspire in us all humility and the courage to take responsibility for our actions. Don't forget, next week, Saturday, we again have Shabbat at the house with our extra special feature story. Until then, see you next time.